I'm Jessica Miller, 34, formerly the marketing director at Sullivan & Barnes before I sacrificed my career for Derek's ambitions. That night at Meridian Technologies' annual gala, I stood in my consignment shop dress while my husband and his boss Nathan snickered at my appearance. "Just a housewife now," Derek whispered, not realizing I heard every word. The humiliation burned through me like acid. I never imagined one whispered conversation would change everything. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit that subscribe button to join me on this journey of reclaiming self-worth. 6 years ago, my life looked completely different. I was Jessica Miller, marketing executive at Sullivan & Barnes, one of the top marketing firms in Chicago. My days were filled with client pitches, campaign strategies, and the exhilarating rush of closing major deals. I had worked my way up from entry-level over 8 years, building a reputation for innovative approaches that delivered results. My Luminance Beauty campaign had even won the prestigious Markham Award, and industry publications occasionally featured my strategies as case studies. My world changed at the National Marketing Conference in Atlanta. I was presenting our successful rebranding strategy for a major tech company when I noticed a tall, handsome man in the audience who seemed genuinely engaged with my presentation. Derek Carter approached me afterward, complimenting not just my delivery, but asking insightful questions about the methodology behind our success metrics. "Your approach to consumer engagement is fascinating," he said, his blue eyes focused intently on mine. "Would you be interested in discussing it further over dinner?" Our first date lasted 4 hours. Derek was the director of sales at Meridian Technologies, ambitious and charming. He understood the demands of a high-pressure career and seemed to admire my accomplishments. Within 3 months, we were inseparable, and by 6 months, he had proposed during a weekend trip to Lake Michigan. "We'll be unstoppable together," he promised, slipping the diamond ring on my finger. Power couple of the business world. After our wedding, Derek received an opportunity for advancement at Meridian, one that required relocating to Boston. The company was expanding its East Coast operations, and the move came with a significant title bump and salary increase. "This is my chance to really move up," Derek explained, his excitement palpable. "The VP of sales is retiring next year, and if I'm already established there, I'm the natural successor." We discussed my options. Sullivan & Barnes had no Boston office, and while they valued my work, remote positions weren't part of their structure. Derek suggested it might be the perfect time for me to take a break. "Just temporarily," he assured me. "Once we're settled, you can find something even better. Boston has a great marketing scene." It made sense at the time. Someone needed to manage the relocation logistics, and Derek would be traveling extensively during the transition. I resigned from Sullivan & Barnes, with my boss Marcia expressing genuine regret. "You're making a mistake, Jessica," she said during my farewell lunch. "I've seen this scenario play out before. Don't lose yourself supporting someone else's dream." I laughed off her concern. "It's not forever. We're partners. His success is mine too." The temporary break stretched longer than anticipated. Boston's marketing firms weren't hiring at my level, and Derek's new position demanded more than expected. He frequently attended business dinners and weekend retreats, leaving me to establish our new home alone. "Your support makes all this possible," Derek would say, kissing me goodbye before another business trip. "I couldn't do this without you." I threw myself into creating the perfect home environment. I took cooking classes, learned interior design, and maintained an immaculate house. When Derek suggested hosting dinner parties for his colleagues, I became an expert hostess, ensuring everything was flawless. Over time, subtle changes crept into our relationship. The man who once asked about my career aspirations now interrupted my stories about potential job opportunities. "Is this really the right time?" "I'm in line for another promotion," he'd say. "We need to focus on that first." Derek's boss, Nathan Perkins, entered our lives about 2 years after the move. As Senior VP of Operations, Nathan represented the next rung on Derek's climb up the corporate ladder. From our first meeting, I sensed Nathan's dismissiveness toward me. "So you're a housewife now?" he asked during a company barbecue, despite Derek having explained my previous career. That must be relaxing. Derek never corrected these misconceptions. Instead, he began adopting Nathan's attitudes, particularly his old-fashioned views on corporate spouses. Nathan says having a supportive wife at home is crucial for advancement, Derek mentioned one evening. He thinks executives with stay-at-home wives progress faster because they can focus completely on work. My attempts to network independently or mention returning to marketing were increasingly met with resistance. "You don't want to seem desperate for attention," Derek cautioned after I'd engaged a colleague's wife in a discussion about digital marketing trends. "It makes me look like I can't provide for you." 3 years into our Boston life, I barely recognized myself. My professional confidence had eroded, replaced by anxiety about measuring up as Derek's wife. I maintained a perfect exterior, stylish home, elegant appearance, charming conversation, while feeling increasingly hollow inside. The announcement of Meridian's annual gala came with Derek's news that he was being considered for the VP position. "This gala is crucial," he emphasized, pacing our kitchen. "Howard Maxwell himself will be there. The CEO rarely attends these events. Nathan says this could be the final piece that secures my promotion." I nodded, already mentally planning my preparations. "I'll make sure everything is perfect." "You always do," Derek replied, though his tone held more expectation than gratitude. What I didn't realize then was that this gala wouldn't just be another performance as the supportive corporate wife, it would be the night that changed everything. When the formal invitation arrived for Meridian Technologies' annual leadership gala, I felt a flutter of excitement I hadn't experienced in months. The event would be held at the prestigious Windsor Hotel in downtown Boston, known for hosting the city's most elegant affairs. After years of isolation and domestic routine, the prospect of an evening of adult conversation and sophistication was intoxicating. "This is black tie, Derek," I said, examining the heavy cream-colored card with gold embossing. "I'll need a new dress." Derek glanced up from his laptop with a slight frown. "Just use the credit card with the usual limit. Nothing too flashy, elegant, but appropriate." The usual limit was $300, a far cry from what designer gowns cost for events of this caliber. In my previous life, I wouldn't have thought twice about investing in a statement piece for an important industry event. Now, I carefully managed the household allowance Derek deposited monthly into my account. Boston's high-end department stores proved disappointing. Everything within my budget looked exactly like what it was, affordable but unremarkable. After a day of fruitless shopping, I stumbled upon Encore Consignment, a boutique specializing in previously owned designer wear. "Looking for something special?" asked the stylish older woman who owned the shop. "A gala," I explained. "Something that says successful but not trying too hard." She studied me thoughtfully before disappearing into the back room. She returned with a midnight blue silk gown with a subtle shimmer, a Marchesa design that would have cost thousands new. "The previous owner wore it once to a charity event," she explained. "It's 2 seasons old, but true elegance never expires." The dress fit as though it had been made for me, the rich color bringing out highlights in my hair and making my eyes appear more vibrant. At $275, it took almost my entire budget, but when I looked in the mirror, I saw glimpses of the confident woman I used to be. The week before the gala, I scheduled everything meticulously: hair appointment, manicure, facial. I researched current events and industry news so I could engage intelligently in conversations. I even practiced small talk in front of the mirror, dismayed at how rusty my social skills had become. The day of the gala arrived with unexpected tensions. Derek had been distant all week, preoccupied with preparation meetings with Nathan. As I laid out his tuxedo and began my own preparations, his impatience became increasingly evident. "Do you really need 3 hours to get ready?" he asked, checking his watch repeatedly. "I want to look perfect for you," I replied, applying my foundation with careful precision. Derek sighed heavily. "Nathan suggested we meet for drinks before the gala. Partner wives are joining too." "You didn't mention that before. When do we need to leave?" "About an hour ago," he said, the edge in his voice unmistakable. I hurried through my remaining preparations, my hands slightly shaking as I applied my mascara and secured my hair in an elegant updo. When I finally emerged in my midnight blue gown, I paused in the doorway, hoping for the appreciative look Derek used to give me early in our marriage. He barely glanced up from his phone. Finally, "Is that from a consignment shop?" The question stung. "How did you know?" "The design is from 2 years ago. Victoria mentioned she almost bought it herself." Victoria was Nathan's wife, a woman who spent more on monthly spa treatments than my entire clothing budget. "It's Marchesa," I said defensively. "It's classic." Derek shrugged. "Whatever. We're already late." The drive to the Windsor was tense, filled with Derek's last-minute coaching. "Remember, Howard Maxwell values loyalty above everything. Don't mention your past work experiences. It makes you sound like you're dwelling on the past." "I thought my marketing background might be interesting, Jessica," Derek interrupted. "Nobody wants to hear about campaigns you ran 4 years ago. It makes you sound desperate to seem relevant." Each word was a small cut, but I maintained my composed smile. "Of course. I'll follow your lead." The Windsor Hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed into a glittering wonderland of crystal and silver. Chandeliers cast a warm glow over ice sculptures and elaborate floral arrangements. A string quartet played softly in the corner, providing elegant background music to the hum of conversation. As we entered, I straightened my posture and put on my most confident smile, a muscle memory from my professional days. Derek immediately began scanning the room for Nathan. "There he is," Derek murmured, guiding me with a firm hand on my lower back. "Remember, Victoria is very particular about etiquette. She's connected to Boston's old money." Nathan Perkins stood near the bar, a glass of scotch in hand. Beside him, Victoria Perkins wore a striking red gown that I immediately recognized as current season Valentino. Her diamond necklace alone probably cost more than my car. "Derek, we thought you'd abandoned us," Nathan called out, his voice jovial but with an undertone of reproach. "Sorry we're late." "You know how it is," Derek replied with a meaningful glance in my direction. Victoria's eyes traveled over my dress with the practiced assessment of someone determining exact value. "Jessica, darling, that blue is nostalgic. Marchesa 2019, isn't it? Bold choice to go vintage." I forced a smile. "Good eye. I believe in sustainable fashion." Victoria's laugh tinkled like ice in a glass. "How resourceful of you." As the evening began, I tried to recapture my excitement. The venue was stunning, the food promised to be exquisite, and surely among all these people, I could find interesting conversation. For a moment, as we moved through the crowd with Derek introducing me to colleagues, I felt a whisper of my old social confidence returning. "Jessica used to be in marketing," Derek would say as an introduction, always in past tense, always minimizing. Yet with each introduction, I smiled genuinely and engaged as best I could, hoping this night might mark a return to the world I'd left behind. I couldn't have imagined how prophetic that hope would prove to be, though not in the way I expected. After the initial round of introductions, Derek was pulled into a conversation with several executives from the sales department. I found myself standing beside Victoria Perkins at the edge of the ballroom, both of us holding flutes of champagne and observing the room. "So," Victoria began, her voice dripping with practiced sweetness, "how do you fill your days now that you're not working?" "I imagine it must be quite quiet." "I keep busy," I replied, maintaining my smile. "I've been taking some online courses in digital marketing to stay current with industry trends." Victoria raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "How ambitious." Though I've always found that women who try to balance too much end up excelling at nothing. I embraced my role as Nathan's wife years ago. His success is my success. Of course, I nodded politely. Though I believe partnerships can take many forms. Theoretically, perhaps, Victoria smiled tightly. But the men in the C-suite have certain expectations of their wives. Traditional values still reign in successful marriages. Before I could respond, 2 more executive wives joined our circle and Victoria smoothly shifted to discussing the upcoming charity gala she was chairing. I stood quietly, sipping my champagne, increasingly aware of my outsider status in this carefully curated world of corporate spouses. After a few minutes of listening to detailed discussions of tennis club politics and comparisons of recent European vacations, I excused myself to find Derek. Perhaps with him, I could at least feel less adrift. I spotted Derek and Nathan standing near a large ice sculpture of the Meridian Technologies logo. They hadn't noticed me approaching, partially hidden by a large floral arrangement. I slowed my steps when I caught fragments of their conversation. "Must have found it at a thrift store," Nathan was saying with a smirk. "Looks like something from a markdown rack." Derek laughed, that particular laugh he used only when trying to impress someone. "She doesn't really understand corporate culture anymore. Been out of the game too long." I froze, the realization washing over me like ice water. They were talking about me, about my dress. "At least she's decorative enough," Nathan continued, swirling his scotch. Though Victoria mentioned she tried discussing some marketing nonsense earlier. Just a housewife who couldn't cut it in the real world, pretending she still understands business. My husband, the man who had once admired my professional accomplishments, nodded in agreement. Sometimes I have to remind her that her job is to make me look good, not try to impress people with outdated industry knowledge. "Women like that don't understand their value is in supporting us, not competing with us," Nathan added. "You did the right thing getting her to quit. No man wants to come home to a wife who thinks she's a CEO." The two men chuckled, and Derek raised his glass in agreement. "To supportive wives who know their place." I stood motionless, blood rushing in my ears. Every insecurity I'd developed over the past 3 years crystallized in that moment. The careful facade I'd maintained. That this was a mutual decision, that we were partners, shattered completely. My face flushed hot with humiliation, then cold with shock. I must have made some small sound, because Derek turned and saw me. For a split second, his expression revealed guilt before quickly rearranging into casual nonchalance. "Jessica, there you are. We were just discussing how these events have changed over the years." The blatant lie made my stomach turn. Nathan didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed, instead giving me a patronizing smile. "Your husband was telling me about your cooking skills. Apparently, you make a remarkable pot roast." My culinary abilities. That's what Derek chose to highlight about me to his boss, not my education, not my former career accomplishments, but my pot roast. "I need some air," I managed to say, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. I turned and walked as steadily as I could toward the ladies' room, feeling Derek's and Nathan's eyes on my back. Once inside the mercifully empty bathroom, I gripped the marble countertop and stared at my reflection in the ornate mirror. Who is this woman? With her carefully applied makeup, her elegant updo, her consignment shop dress. For years, I'd been molding myself into someone Derek could showcase as the perfect corporate wife, and in return, he mocked me behind my back. A memory surfaced, standing on stage accepting the Markham Award for Excellence in Marketing, my team applauding, industry leaders acknowledging my innovation. That woman seemed like a stranger now. I splashed cold water on my wrists, a trick I'd once used before major presentations to steady my nerves. I reapplied my lipstick, blotted away the slight smudge of mascara under my right eye, and straightened my shoulders. "You are still Jessica Miller," I whispered to my reflection. "You haven't disappeared." When I returned to the ballroom, I approached Derek and Nathan with a practiced smile. Derek placed his arm around my waist in a gesture that once felt protective but now seemed possessive. "Feeling better, darling?" he asked for the benefit of anyone listening. "Much," I replied coolly. The conversation resumed around me, with Nathan dominating the discussion about Meridian's recent acquisition of a smaller tech firm. I nodded at appropriate intervals, playing my part while inwardly seething. Then disaster struck in the form of a harried waiter carrying a tray of red wine. As he squeezed past our group, someone bumped into him from behind. The tray tilted, and before anyone could react, a full glass of Cabernet splashed across the front of my midnight blue dress. "Oh," I gasped, more from shock than anything else. The waiter was mortified. "Ma'am, I'm so terribly sorry. Please, let me get some club soda." Nathan cut him off. Young man, do you have any idea how much that dress cost? The irony of Nathan suddenly pretending my thrift store dress was valuable might have been amusing under different circumstances. It's fine, I said to the flustered waiter. Accidents happen. But as the young man hurried away to find something to help clean the stain, I caught the exchange of glances between Derek and Nathan, the barely suppressed amusement, the slight curl of their lips. Behind them, Victoria watched with a familiar expression of disguised delight at my misfortune. Such a shame about your lovely vintage dress, she said, her sympathy as artificial as her eyelashes. Perhaps it's a sign that some things are better left in the past. The double meaning wasn't lost on me. I stood there, champagne in one hand, a cocktail napkin ineffectually dabbing at the spreading stain with the other, surrounded by people who saw me as nothing more than an accessory. And a flawed one at that. In that moment, something hardened inside me. The humiliation crystallized into anger, not the hot, reactive kind, but something colder and more focused. I excused myself once more, but this time, it wasn't to retreat and lick my wounds. This time, I was strategizing. With the red wine stains spreading across the front of my dress, I made my way to a relatively quiet corner of the ballroom. The catering staff had directed me to a small service area where they kept emergency supplies. A kind-hearted server named Mia helped me apply club soda and salt to the stain, which minimized but didn't eliminate it. It's still a beautiful dress, Mia offered sympathetically. And honestly, you carry yourself so well most people won't even notice. I thanked her, appreciating the small kindness after the cutting remarks I'd endured. After she returned to her duties, I took a moment to gather myself in the relative quiet. I decided to remain in this less trafficked area of the ballroom for a few minutes, using the time to rebuild my composure and decide how to approach the remainder of this excruciating evening. From my vantage point, I could observe the room without being immediately visible. Derek and Nathan had moved to the bar, still engrossed in conversation, occasionally laughing in that particular way men do when they're bonding over shared superiority. Victoria had joined a circle of other executive wives, likely discussing their next charity luncheon or comparing vacation homes. I was so absorbed in my observations that I didn't immediately notice the older gentleman who had approached until he spoke. Forgive me for being forward, but aren't you Jessica Miller from Sullivan and Barnes? I turned, surprised to hear my maiden name and former company. The man before me was in his mid-60s, distinguished-looking with silver hair and intelligent eyes behind designer glasses. He wore his tuxedo with the ease of someone accustomed to formal attire. I confirmed, automatically extending my hand. Though it's Jessica Carter now. I'm sorry, have we met? Howard Maxwell, he introduced himself, shaking my hand firmly. We haven't been formally introduced, but I attended your presentation on integrated digital marketing strategies at the Chicago conference 3 years ago. Your work on the Luminance campaign was remarkable. Howard Maxwell, the CEO of Meridian Technologies. The man Derek had been so anxious to impress. And he remembered my professional work. That's very kind of you to remember, I said, genuinely touched that someone of his stature would recall my presentation from years ago. Impossible to forget, he replied. Your approach to cross-platform integration was ahead of its time. The industry has only recently caught up to what you were implementing then. For the first time that evening, I felt myself engaging in a genuine conversation rather than performing a role. Howard asked insightful questions about my previous work, and I found myself articulating ideas and perspectives I hadn't expressed in years. So, what brought you from Sullivan and Barnes to Boston? He inquired. I'm surprised they let talent like yours go. The question was innocent but landed heavily. I hesitated, unsure how to respond without either lying or speaking poorly of Derek to his CEO. My husband Derek received an opportunity with Meridian that required relocation, I explained carefully. It seemed like the right decision for us at the time. Howard's expression was thoughtful. Derek Carter? From operations? Yes, though he's in line for the VP of sales position now. Something flickered in Howard's eyes, surprise, perhaps, or reassessment. And you haven't pursued marketing opportunities here in Boston? Again, I measured my response. The timing hasn't been quite right yet. Howard seemed to read between the lines. His gaze drifted briefly to where Derek and Nathan stood, then back to me. A shame for the industry to lose someone with your insights. Especially now, when the landscape is changing so rapidly. Our conversation shifted to current marketing trends, and I found myself analyzing the effectiveness of various digital strategies that had emerged since I'd left the field. Despite my years away, I'd kept up with industry developments through online courses and marketing publications. You know, Howard said after listening to my assessment of influencer marketing's evolution, we're actually embarking on a major rebranding initiative at Meridian. Our current marketing approach is... He paused, choosing his words diplomatically, not yielding the results we'd hoped for. I noticed your recent campaign focusing on technological innovation, I ventured. It's well produced, but it looks like every other tech company's advertising, Howard finished with a knowing smile. Exactly the problem. We're getting lost in the noise. The conversation flowed easily as Howard described Meridian's current challenges. I found myself offering perspectives and potential approaches, drawing on both my past experience and current knowledge. What we need is someone who understands both traditional marketing fundamentals and today's digital landscape, Howard said thoughtfully. Someone who can see the industry clearly without being entrenched in corporate groupthink. As we talked, I became increasingly aware that Derek was watching us from across the room. His expression had shifted from initial confusion to growing concern as he observed my animated conversation with his CEO. Howard noticed too. Your husband seems to be wondering what we're discussing so intently. I smiled slightly. He's probably surprised to see me talking about professional matters. It's been made clear that my role at these functions is more decorative. The statement came out more candidly than I'd intended, but Howard didn't seem offended by my frankness. Is that so? He asked, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. And whose assessment is that? I hesitated before responding truthfully. Both Derek's and Mr. Perkins. I overheard them earlier discussing how I don't understand corporate culture anymore, and that my value is in supporting Derek, not expressing outdated business knowledge. Howard's expression darkened momentarily. I see. And the wine stain on your dress, an unfortunate accident. Yes, though its aftermath seemed to amuse them. Howard nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. You know, Jessica, I've found that in business, as in life, people often reveal their character not through their successes, but through their treatment of others. He paused before continuing. Would you indulge me by sharing your thoughts on Meridian's current marketing strategy? I'd value a fresh perspective. Encouraged by his genuine interest, I offered an honest assessment. I outlined what I saw as the key weaknesses in their current approach. The generic messaging that failed to differentiate them from competitors, the disconnected social media strategy, and the missed opportunities to highlight their unique technological innovations in ways that resonated with their target demographic. Howard listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions that demonstrated his own sharp business acumen. As I spoke, I felt the familiar confidence of my professional self returning, a part of me I'd suppressed for too long. You've given me more actionable insights in 20 minutes than I've received in our last 3 marketing meetings, Howard said when I finished. Which brings me to a proposition. I've been considering creating a special project team to revamp our entire marketing approach. Would you be interested in offering your professional consultation? The question caught me off guard. I would need to think about it. Of course, Howard nodded. Though I should mention that dinner is about to be served, and I'd be honored if you'd join me at the main table. We could continue our discussion. I glanced toward Derek, who was now watching us with undisguised anxiety. Nathan had joined him, both men looking uncomfortable as they observed my interaction with Howard. This was the moment. I could retreat to my assigned role, sitting quietly beside Derek at a table of his colleagues where I'd be expected to smile and nod appropriately. Or I could step back into a world where my thoughts and abilities were valued. The decision, when it came, felt like taking a full breath after years of shallow breathing. I'd be delighted to join you, Mr. Maxwell. Howard, please, he corrected with a warm smile, offering his arm. And perhaps you could tell me more about that award-winning Luminance campaign during dinner. I've always been curious about the strategy behind it. As we walked toward the main table at the center of the ballroom, I felt Derek's and Nathan's stares like physical weight. But for the first time in years, I walked with the confidence of a woman who remembered her own worth. The main table at a corporate gala sends a clear message about hierarchy and favor. Positioned on a slightly raised platform at the center of the ballroom, it offered the best view of the evening's presentations and, more importantly, put its occupants on display for everyone else to observe. As Howard Maxwell guided me toward this power center, the subtle shift in the room's energy was palpable. Conversations paused momentarily as people noticed the CEO escorting me, a wine-stained, previously invisible corporate wife, to the place of honor. The table was already partially filled with Meridian's most senior executives and their spouses, who looked up with polite curiosity as we approached. "Good evening, everyone," Howard greeted them. "I'd like to introduce Jessica Carter, who's going to join us for dinner. Jessica has some fascinating insights into marketing strategy that I think will interest you all." I smiled and greeted each person as Howard made introductions. The Chief Financial Officer, the Head of Research and Development, the General Counsel, all with their respective spouses. These were the true decision-makers of Meridian Technologies, people Derek mentioned with reverent tones but rarely interacted with directly. Jessica used to head major campaigns at Sullivan and Barnes in Chicago, Howard explained as we took our seats. Her Luminance Beauty campaign won the Markham Award a few years back. The chief marketing officer, a woman named Patricia Winters, immediately leaned forward with interest. "That was your campaign?" The micro-influencer strategy was revolutionary at the time. "Thank you," I replied, feeling a warm rush of professional pride. We took a risk moving away from celebrity endorsements, but the authenticity connected much more effectively with the target demographic. As we settled into conversation, I noticed Derek approaching the table, his expression a mixture of confusion and alarm. Nathan hovered several steps behind him, clearly uncertain about how to handle this unexpected development. "Howard," Derek greeted with forced casualness, "I see you've met my wife." "Indeed I have," Howard replied cordially but without the warmth he'd shown me. "Jessica has been sharing some remarkable insights about marketing strategies." "Did you know she was responsible for the Luminance campaign? Quite an accomplishment." Derek's smile tightened. "Yes, Jessica had quite a successful career before we moved to Boston. Which makes it all the more curious that she isn't currently working in the field," Howard observed mildly, though his eyes were sharp. "Talent like hers is rare." Derek shifted uncomfortably. We agreed that supporting my career at Meridian was the priority for now. Howard made a non-committal sound and turned to Patricia. "Patricia, Jessica was just about to share her thoughts on our current market positioning. I think you'll find her perspective valuable." Derek remained standing awkwardly at the edge of the table until Howard finally acknowledged him again. "Was there something you needed, Derek?" "I just wanted to make sure Jessica was comfortable," he replied, his eyes sending the urgent signals I chose to ignore. "She seems quite comfortable to me," Howard observed. "Perhaps you should return to your table. The first course is being served." It was a dismissal, polite but unmistakable. Derek retreated, throwing one last pointed look at me that clearly communicated we would be discussing this later. Throughout the elegant four-course dinner, I engaged in substantive discussions about marketing trends, digital transformation, and Meridian's position in the evolving tech landscape. Patricia asked insightful questions about my previous campaigns, while the CFO, Martin Greaves, seemed particularly interested in my views on measurable ROI for digital marketing investments. The problem with our current approach, Patricia admitted after the main course was cleared, is that we're still operating on outdated assumptions about our customer base. We need fresh eyes. Sometimes being outside the day-to-day operations allows for clearer perspective, I offered. When you're too close to something, it's difficult to see the broader patterns. Howard nodded thoughtfully. Which is precisely why external consultation can be so valuable. He turned to address the table. I've been considering forming a special project team to reimagine our entire marketing strategy, and I believe Jessica could provide valuable input. From my peripheral vision, I could see Nathan whispering urgently to Derek at their table across the room. Victoria was watching our table with barely concealed shock, her perfect posture now rigid with tension. As dinner progressed to dessert and coffee, Nathan finally made his move, approaching our table with Derek reluctantly trailing behind him. "Howard," Nathan greeted with exaggerated joviality, "I hope you're enjoying the evening." The planning committee worked hard to make it special. He glanced at me with poorly disguised disdain before continuing. "I don't want to interrupt, but I did want to mention the Sullivan proposal we discussed yesterday. It was a transparent attempt to redirect Howard's attention and demonstrate his own importance." Howard's response was coolly professional. "Yes, Nathan, I recall our discussion. We can address it on Monday during the executive meeting." Nathan persisted. "I thought you might want to review some of the preliminary numbers tonight. Derek has been instrumental in developing the projections." Derek looked deeply uncomfortable, caught between his boss's obvious power play and the CEO's clear lack of interest. "Monday will be soon enough," Howard replied firmly. He turned back to me. "Jessica, you were mentioning an innovative approach to product storytelling." I continued my point, aware of Nathan and Derek still hovering awkwardly at the edge of our table. Eventually, they retreated, Nathan's expression thunderous and Derek's anxious. As the formal dinner concluded and the event moved into its networking phase, Howard introduced me to several other key executives. In each introduction, he highlighted my professional background and expertise rather than identifying me merely as Derek's wife. Victoria made her play during a brief moment when Howard was engaged with the chairman of the board. She approached with a brittle smile. "Jessica, darling, what a surprise to see you at the main table. Though perhaps not as surprising as hearing you described as a marketing expert." Her voice dripped with sweetness while her eyes remained cold. "It's so important to know when our moment has passed, don't you think? Nothing worse than clinging to past glories." Before I could respond, Howard rejoined us. Mrs. Perkins. I was just telling the chairman about Jessica's brilliant analysis of our current market positioning. Her observation about our ineffective demographic targeting was particularly astute." Victoria's smile froze. "How interesting. Nathan always says marketing is more art than science, easily influenced by passing trends." "Perhaps that explains our recent underperformance," Howard replied evenly. "A more data-driven approach might serve us better." He turned to me. "Jessica, would you be available to continue our discussion in my office next week? I'm particularly interested in your thoughts on our digital strategy moving forward." In full hearing of Victoria, Howard Maxwell, CEO of Meridian Technologies, was openly requesting my professional input. The significance wasn't lost on anyone within earshot. "I'd be happy to," I replied, maintaining my composure despite the surge of vindication I felt. As the evening drew to a close, Howard shook my hand with genuine warmth. "This has been the most productive gala I've attended in years. I look forward to our meeting, shall we say Tuesday at 10 a.m. "Tuesday would be perfect," I confirmed. When I finally rejoined Derek for our departure, the tension between us was electric. Nathan intercepted us near the coat check, his usual smooth confidence replaced by barely contained anger. "Quite the performance tonight," he said, his voice low and cutting. "Impressive how quickly you pivoted from corporate wife to marketing guru." "It wasn't a pivot, Nathan," I replied calmly. "It's who I've always been." Derek placed a hand on my arm, his grip slightly too tight. "We should go." As we collected our coats, I caught Howard watching the interaction from across the lobby. He gave me a slight nod of acknowledgement, a gesture that conveyed both respect and understanding. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. We all knew it. And as Derek and I stepped out into the cool Boston night, I recognized that more than just my professional prospects had changed that evening. My marriage would never be the same again. The drive home from the gala unfolded in complete silence. Derek white-knuckled the steering wheel, his jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscle twitching. I sat beside him, strangely calm despite the storm I knew was brewing. The city lights flashed across his face as we drove, illuminating flashes of confusion, anger, and something I hadn't seen in him before: fear. When we finally arrived home, Derek slammed the car door and stalked into the house ahead of me. I followed at my own pace, no longer rushing to match his expectations. As I closed the front door behind me, he finally erupted. "What the hell was that?" he demanded, loosening his bow tie with jerky movements. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I had a professional conversation with your CEO," I replied, setting my clutch on the entryway table. He recognized me from my previous work and was interested in my perspective. "Don't play innocent, Jessica. You deliberately undermined me in front of the entire company." Nathan is furious. I met his gaze steadily. "I didn't undermine you. I was myself, the self you and Nathan have been so determined to erase. This isn't about you," Derek shouted, pacing the living room. "Do you understand what's at stake? I've been working toward this VP position for 3 years. 3 years of careful relationship building, strategic projects, playing the corporate game exactly right. And you jeopardized everything in one night because your feelings were hurt." "My feelings were hurt," I repeated incredulously. "I heard you and Nathan mocking me, Derek. Laughing about my dress, calling me a husband who couldn't cut it in the real world. Saying your success depended on keeping me in my place." Derek had the decency to look momentarily ashamed before his defensiveness resurged. "You weren't supposed to hear that." Nathan was just blowing off steam, and I was playing along. "That makes it worse, not better," I said quietly. "You are willing to diminish me to elevate yourself in Nathan's eyes. That's not what partners do." "Partners?" Derek laughed bitterly. "We agreed that my career would take precedence. You knew what you were signing up for when you moved to Boston. I agreed to temporarily put my career on hold to support your opportunity, not to become your accessory. I never agreed to be mocked, sidelined, or treated like an embarrassing relic of the past." Derek ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "You're overreacting. This is how the corporate world works. Nathan is old school. He responds to traditional dynamics. And Howard Maxwell, is he old school too? Because he seemed quite interested in my professional insights." At the mention of Howard, Derek's expression shifted from anger to panic. "What exactly did Maxwell say to you? Did he offer you something?" "He asked me to meet him on Tuesday to discuss Meridian's marketing strategy," I said. "He's forming a special project team." Derek sank onto the sofa, his anger deflating into anxiety. "This is a disaster. Nathan will think I put you up to this, that I'm trying to circumvent his authority by having my wife influence Maxwell. Or maybe Howard simply recognized talent and expertise regardless of whose wife I am," I suggested. Derek looked up at me, his expression revealing something I'd suspected but never confirmed until that moment. He was threatened by my abilities. "You really don't understand corporate politics, Jessica. This isn't about talent. It's about loyalty and hierarchy." "Then perhaps it's time Meridian's culture evolved," I replied. We argued late into the night, moving from accusations to painful truths about our marriage. Derek finally admitted what I'd long suspected. He had actively discouraged my return to work because he feared I would outshine him. "You were already winning awards and getting industry recognition," he confessed around 2 in the morning, his voice hoarse from hours of argument. I was still climbing the ladder. If we both pursued careers in Boston, everyone would have compared us. They would have expected me to have connections for you, to help you. But you probably would have surpassed me within a year. The admission hung in the air between us, both devastating and validating. "So instead of being proud of having a successful wife, you decided to eliminate the competition," I said softly. Derek had no response to that. He spent the night in the guest room, and I lay awake in our bed, processing the irrevocable shift in our relationship. At 8:30 the next morning, my phone rang with an unknown number. When I answered, Howard Maxwell's assistant was on the line. "Mr. Maxwell would like to move your meeting to tomorrow morning if that's convenient for you," she explained. "He's quite eager to continue your discussion." I agreed to the earlier meeting, and within minutes of ending the call, my phone lit up with a text from Derek, Maxwell just called Nathan. Emergency executive meeting this morning. What did you do? I didn't respond. Whatever was happening at Meridian today, I would learn the details soon enough. Derek didn't return home that evening. Around 9 o'clock, he texted that he was staying at a hotel to think things through. The subtext was clear: he was avoiding facing me before learning the outcome of my meeting with Howard. Tuesday morning, I dressed with purpose, a tailored charcoal suit I'd kept from my Sullivan and Barnes days, updated with modern accessories. Looking in the mirror, I recognized the professional woman I'd once been emerging once more. At Meridian's headquarters, I was escorted directly to Howard's office on the top floor, a space Derek had described reverently but had himself visited only twice in 3 years. Howard greeted me warmly, gesturing to a seating area with a spectacular view of Boston Harbor. "Thank you for coming in on such short notice, Jessica." "Thank you for the invitation," I replied. "Though I confess I'm curious about the urgency." Howard smiled. "I've never been one to delay once I recognize an opportunity. After our conversation at the Gala, I reviewed some of your previous work. Your Luminance campaign was only the tip of the iceberg. Your integrated strategies for Westbrook Financial and the digital transformation you led for Camden Healthcare were equally impressive." I was surprised by his thoroughness. "You've done your research." "I make it a point to understand the capabilities of people who interest me," he replied. "Which brings me to the purpose of this meeting. I'd like to offer you a position at Meridian Technologies as our new director of marketing." The directness of the offer caught me off guard. "That's unexpected." "Is it?" Howard asked. "You demonstrated more strategic insight in one dinner conversation than our current marketing team has provided in the past year. We're undergoing a critical transition period as we expand into new markets. We need fresh thinking." "I appreciate your confidence," I said carefully, "but I should mention that my husband is one of our sales managers." "Yes," Howard finished for me. "I don't see that as relevant to your qualifications for this position." "Unless you do." The question was pointed. Howard was offering me not just a job, but a clear statement about my independent value. "No," I decided. "I don't see it as relevant either." We spent the next hour discussing specifics. Salary, considerably higher than what I'd earned at Sullivan and Barnes, responsibilities, and Howard's vision for Meridian's marketing direction. By the time I left his office with a formal offer letter, my head was spinning with the suddenness of the opportunity. As I waited for the elevator, I received a text from Derek. "Nathan's been reassigned to regional operations. Effective immediately." "What's going on?" I didn't have time to respond before the elevator doors opened, revealing Nathan himself. His face darkened when he saw me. "Congratulations," he said bitterly. "You managed to torpedo 2 careers in 1 weekend. Hope you're satisfied." "I didn't torpedo anyone's career, Nathan," I replied calmly. "I simply had a conversation about marketing strategy." "Right," he scoffed. "And now I'm being shipped off to oversee Midwest operations while Maxwell restructures the entire executive team." Quite a coincidence. The elevator arrived at the lobby, and as I stepped out, Nathan called after me, "Derek will never forgive you for this. Men don't want wives who undermine them." I turned back, meeting his gaze directly. "Then perhaps he'll need to decide what's more important, his fragile ego or a true partnership." Over the following weeks, Meridian Technologies underwent a significant reorganization. Nathan's demotion to regional operations was just the beginning. The marketing department was completely restructured under my leadership, with Patricia Winters becoming my deputy and closest ally. Derek remained in his sales manager position, neither promoted nor demoted, existing in a professional limbo. He finally returned home after 3 days at the hotel, his initial anger having evolved into a wary resignation. "Howard says you're revamping the entire marketing strategy," he said one evening, attempting casual conversation over dinner. "We're aligning our messaging with actual customer needs rather than what we think they should care about," I confirmed. "Initial testing shows promising results." Derek nodded awkwardly. "People are treating me differently now. The same executives who barely acknowledged me before suddenly know my name." "Because they know mine," I said simply. The truth hung between us, his status now derived partially from his connection to me, a complete reversal of our previous dynamic. Some of his colleagues were openly resentful, while others adjusted to the new reality with professional pragmatism. Victoria Perkins made a calculated attempt to repair our relationship, inviting me to lunch with transparent insincerity. "We really should become better acquainted now that you've joined the Meridian family properly," she suggested with a practiced smile. "I think we're already well acquainted, Victoria," I declined politely. "But I appreciate the gesture." My first major presentation to the executive team came 3 months after joining Meridian. I outlined a comprehensive rebranding strategy that incorporated digital innovation while emphasizing the human impact of Meridian's technology, a departure from the industry's typical technical focus. Howard sat at the head of the conference table, nodding appreciatively as I concluded. "This is exactly the fresh perspective we needed," he announced to the room. "Jessica, I'd like you to lead the implementation team personally." As the executives filed out after the meeting, Derek waited by the door. We had been living in an uneasy truce, sleeping in separate bedrooms while attempting to have civil conversations about our future. "That was impressive," he said, gesturing to my presentation materials. "Even Nathan would have to admit it." "I didn't do it to impress Nathan," I replied. "Or you." Derek nodded, his expression solemn. "I know. That's what I've been thinking about lately. You did it because it's who you are, who you've always been. I just couldn't see it anymore because I was too busy trying to make you into who I needed you to be." It was the most honest thing he'd said in years. "We need to talk about what happens next," I said quietly. "Really talk, not just avoid the difficult parts." Derek agreed, and that evening, we had the most genuine conversation of our marriage. He admitted his insecurities, his fear of being outshined, and how he'd allowed Nathan's outdated views to influence his treatment of me. "I was wrong," he said finally. "About all of it. I don't know if we can fix this, but I'd like to try. The real question is whether you want to." I didn't have an immediate answer. The betrayal ran deep, and trust, once broken, couldn't be repaired overnight. But 6 years of marriage deserved at least an attempt at honest reconciliation. "I think we need professional help," I suggested. "If we're going to have any chance, we need someone to help us navigate this." Derek agreed to marriage counseling, and though the process was painful and often uncomfortable, it forced us to confront the fundamental imbalances that had poisoned our relationship. Meanwhile, my career at Meridian flourished. The marketing team's new direction yielded measurable results, and Howard became both mentor and champion of my work. When he began hinting at grooming me for an executive VP position, the irony wasn't lost on either Derek or me. Derek Carter was now frequently referred to as Jessica Carter's husband in industry circles, exactly the scenario he had once feared. 6 months after that fateful gala night, Meridian Technologies launched its rebranded product line with a marketing campaign that broke all previous engagement records. The strategy I developed, focusing on how our technology improved actual human lives rather than just technical specifications, resonated deeply with both existing and potential customers. "The quarterly numbers just came in," Patricia announced, bursting into my office one Thursday afternoon. "Sales are up 38% compared to last year's launch. The executive team is ecstatic." The success was validating, but even more rewarding was the culture shift I'd witnessed within the marketing department. The team that had initially viewed me with suspicion, the outsider who'd mysteriously appeared in their hierarchy, now operated with renewed energy and creativity. Howard stopped by later that day, a rare smile softening his usually serious demeanor. "I took a chance on you, Jessica, but even I didn't anticipate this level of success." "Thank you for giving me the opportunity," I replied. Not many CEOs would have recognized potential in someone they met at a gala. Howard's expression turned reflective. "I've been in business long enough to know that talent doesn't always come in expected packages. The most innovative thinking often comes from people who've had to navigate obstacles." He paused before adding, "I'm considering retirement next year. The board has been discussing succession planning, and your name has come up for consideration as Executive VP of Marketing and Customer Experience." The news was stunning. "That's A significant jump from my current position. It would be, Howard acknowledged, but your results speak for themselves. Think about it. We'll discuss the details when you're ready. As Howard left my office, I sat back in my chair, contemplating how dramatically my professional life had transformed in just 6 months. From invisible corporate wife to potential executive leadership, the journey seemed almost surreal. My personal life had undergone equally significant, if more painful, transformations. Derek and I continued our marriage counseling, slowly untangling years of unhealthy patterns. There were breakthroughs and setbacks, moments of connection followed by painful realizations about how deeply our relationship had been damaged. I don't know if I can ever fully trust him again, I admitted to our therapist during one particularly difficult session. Every time I remember how easily he dismissed me to impress Nathan, something breaks inside me. Derek listened, visibly struggling with the impact of his actions. I don't expect immediate forgiveness, he said. But I'm committed to earning back your trust, however long it takes. The counseling forced us to examine not just Derek's betrayal, but my own complicity in abandoning my identity. Why had I so readily set aside my ambitions? What insecurities had I been carrying that made me vulnerable to gradually disappearing into Derek's shadow? These questions had no easy answers, but the process of exploring them brought a new honesty to our relationship. We learned to communicate without the protective layers of resentment and performance that had characterized our marriage for years. Nathan remained in his diminished role overseeing Midwest operations, his influence at Meridian significantly reduced. Occasionally, I would receive passive-aggressive emails questioning marketing decisions or suggesting improvements to campaigns. I responded professionally but firmly, establishing boundaries he had no choice but to respect. Victoria made several attempts to rehabilitate her standing with me as my position at Meridian solidified. Her invitations to lunch became increasingly persistent, each one framed as an opportunity to put the past behind us. During one charity event where we were seated at the same table, she leaned over with practiced casualness. "We really should start fresh, Jessica. Women in leadership positions need to support each other." I smiled politely but directly. "I agree completely about women supporting each other, Victoria. That principle applies in all circumstances, not just when it's professionally advantageous." She didn't approach me again after that. The most meaningful development in my professional life, beyond my own advancement, was the mentorship program I established for women returning to the workforce after career gaps. Relaunch provided training, networking, and placement assistance for talented professionals whose careers had been interrupted by family responsibilities, health issues, or other life circumstances. "Your experience gives you unique insight into the challenges these women face," Howard noted when I presented the initiative. "It's exactly the kind of program that reflects our new brand values." The first cohort of 15 women completed the program successfully, with 12 receiving job offers from Meridian or partner companies. Their stories of rediscovering professional confidence mirrored my own journey, though most had faced far greater obstacles than I had. As the program expanded, I often reflected on how my temporary setback had given me invaluable perspective. Had I continued on my original career path without interruption, would I have developed the same empathy for others struggling to reclaim their professional identities? The question had no definitive answer, but it helped me find meaning in even the painful chapters of my story. One evening, nearly a year after the gala, Howard invited Derek and me to dinner at his home, a rare personal gesture from the usually private CEO. As we enjoyed coffee on his terrace overlooking the Charles River, Howard revealed something that shifted my understanding of that pivotal night. "I should confess something, Jessica," he said. "I didn't approach you at the gala by coincidence. I'd been planning changes to our marketing leadership for months. When I saw your name on the guest list, I researched your background and was intrigued by your previous work. I deliberately sought you out. You knew who I was before we spoke?" I asked, surprised. Howard nodded. "I did, though I certainly didn't anticipate overhearing Nathan and Derek's unfortunate comments or witnessing that wine incident. Those revealed character in a way my planned conversation never could have." Derek shifted uncomfortably beside me, the reminder of his behavior still a source of shame. "Why tell me this now?" I asked. "Because as I prepare to step back from day-to-day operations, I want you to understand something important," Howard replied. "Opportunities rarely arise purely by chance. Usually, someone has recognized your potential before you've fully seen it yourself. Your responsibility is to be prepared when those moments arrive, and to create similar opportunities for others when you're in a position to do so." As we drove home that night, Derek was unusually quiet. Finally, he spoke. "It's ironic, isn't it? I was so worried about being known as Jessica's husband, and now that's exactly what's happened. But it doesn't feel like I feared it would." "How does it feel?" I asked. He considered the question carefully. "Humbling, but also freeing in a way. I've been so focused on climbing the corporate ladder that I never questioned whether I was on the right ladder to begin with." Derek had recently begun exploring opportunities outside of Meridian, possibly even outside of sales entirely. Our counselor suggested this might be healthy, allowing him to build an identity separate from both Nathan's influence and my rising career. Our marriage continued to evolve, neither fully healed nor beyond saving. We had honest conversations about what true partnership meant, supporting each other's growth rather than competing or constraining. Some days brought genuine connection. Others reminded us of the damage we were still working to repair. What had become clear, however, was that I would never again surrender my identity, my ambitions, or my voice to preserve someone else's comfort. That lesson, painful as it was to learn, had transformed not just my career, but my fundamental understanding of self-worth. As I sit in my office today, preparing for tomorrow's executive leadership meeting where I'll present my vision for Meridian's future, I'm reminded of how easily our light can be dimmed when we allow others to define our value. The journey back to myself wasn't straightforward, and it isn't complete. But each day brings new opportunities to stand firmly in my truth and create space for others to do the same. Sometimes a single moment of courage, one decision to speak up, to claim your worth, to refuse further diminishment, can alter the entire trajectory of your life. For me, that moment came in a midnight blue dress with a wine stain, standing in the corner of a ballroom where I'd been humiliated but refused to be broken. If you're watching this and questioning your worth or feeling invisible in your own life, remember, sometimes the people who try to diminish you are the ones who fear your light the most. And that light, your unique capabilities, perspective, and power, doesn't disappear when others fail to acknowledge it. It waits patiently for you to reclaim it. I'd love to hear your stories of reclaiming your worth in the comments below. Was there a moment when you realized you'd been dimming your light for someone else's comfort? How did you find your way back to yourself? Like this video if my story resonated with you. Subscribe if you want more content about navigating career and relationship challenges, and share with someone who might need this message today. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, you are worthy of being seen, heard, and valued exactly as you are.